So welcome everyone. Hope you are doing well. So let me start. Let's start smoothly. First, with a very short intro about RestartLab. This is Mehmet from RestartLab. As RestartLab, we started as a think tank which focuses on redefining the work concept, and actually nowadays we are trying to shift towards being a DAO. Our today's topic actually. So as RestartLab, we believe that the work can be reshaped for the benefit of larger communities. So we believe in supporting the presence of individuals and enabling self-actualization of themselves. We also believe that by questioning the traditional work approaches and habitude, we can co-create a more autonomous way of working, which delivers more value both for the business and for the world. So in that purpose, actually, RestartLab, we aim to revive the organizations via creating a sharing and learning platform like this one, also via leading co-creation of new solutions to all business and management governance problems, and also, of course, via using the wisdom of crowds to shape a better work for the future. So we love to host thinkers, experts from diverse areas to discuss about the future of work and together explore new ways of organizing the work. In that manner, today we have a special guest, Daniel Roberts from Decrypt. So Daniel, welcome and thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Good, thanks for having me.
Thank you, thanks for joining. Would you please start with a short introduction of yourself to us, please?
Sure. So I hope if you guys are all interested in crypto that you know Decrypt. I'd like to think that we are certainly one of the top 2 or 3 crypto news sites. We are a daily news website, so we cover all of the daily news in the space, and there's a flood of it now, right? I mean, I like to say that amid the pandemic, crypto has gone more mainstream than it ever was before. And that means that there's a larger funnel of people who are what I call crypto curious. You know, even if they don't know about it, even if they don't understand it, there are more people than ever who they wonder about it. They want to learn. So we cover the daily news about the crypto industry, and we also educate people on the technical concepts. We have a section called Learn that we consider almost as important as our news coverage. So, you know, I used to be at Yahoo Finance, and that's really one of the best sites for the stock market. I like to think of us as a Yahoo Finance, but specifically for crypto. So it's the place that you can go to start your crypto journey if you're at an understanding level of 0 and you want to go to 1, or it's the place that people who already live and breathe this stuff can go to get their news updates as well. So it's decrypt.co.
Thanks. I invite all of you to discuss this topic all together. So please jump into the conversation whenever you like, or just type your question on the chat area. I will try to follow it. But to make the opening, if you let me, then I have a question, very basic one. Let's start from a very simple question first, which is, what is DAO actually? So what's the idea and the purpose behind DAO?
Sure. It's a good place to start. And, you know, to bring in something other than DAOs, but they're more and more converging. We've all heard about NFTs lately, right? And NFTs are these non-fungible tokens, but they're basically blockchain-based digital collectibles. Now, the reason I mentioned NFTs is that it may feel like NFTs have come out of nowhere and they've exploded in popularity in the last 2 years, and they have, but they're not a new thing. You know, crypto kitties, which were very popular in 2017, which were collectible digital kittens that were on the Ethereum blockchain, those were NFTs. And we just weren't really using that term yet widely. So it's a new buzzword, but it's not a completely new thing. DAOs are a little bit similar. DAO, DAO, stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And we can get into whether that acronym even makes sense. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer. But my point is that the first DAO, which was actually called the DAO, was back in 2016. So this is not a brand new concept, but along with the explosion of the crypto market in the last 2 years, it has kind of gone mainstream. And I think you could credit Constitution DAO with being one of the moments that brought DAOs mainstream in the last year. But that first DAO in 2016 was a group of people who had bought into a token crowd sale on Ethereum. And there was a major hack of that group. So people talk about the DAO hack. And that actually led to the kind of fork with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. So we don't have to get too in the weeds. But the point is that DAOs started in 2016. They have become much more popular recently. They are proliferating, multiplying. And although it stands for something, which we can get into, really, it's better just to think of it as a group of like-minded people on the internet who form a coalition. So DAOs are forming to invest in things. There are DAOs that form where everyone puts some of their money in the form of crypto and they buy something. DAOs are forming to be media groups. There are media DAOs where members of the DAO submit content and they can publish stories. There are DAOs that exist for members of a club and you have to hold a certain NFT to get into the DAO. And most DAOs operate using Discord. And we can get into that. We can talk about that, how that became the go-to chat platform. But basically, if you want to join a DAO, you're probably going to end up joining the Discord channel. And Discord is, a chat app, kind of like WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal. But Discord seems to be the chosen one for DAOs and crypto people. So they are groups of people, usually pro-crypto people who hold some amount of crypto, who are pooling together their capital for a purpose.
Perfect. So is it something like a community, or what's the difference between a normal social community between a DAO? So I'm also wondering about how does a DAO really work in reality? So how one can establish a DAO and how it works. So I think if we think it like a company, I guess basically in a company, we can talk about some people are making decisions. And some people are making the execution, and also there's a management of the money, right? So how do we spread the control out of across all the participants, and how do we manage the income and the costs, and how do we really manage who will do what in a DAO environment?
It's a big question, right? I mean, it's the big question. A lot of people who are so pro DAO, they think that DAOs are the future of companies. Instead of companies, we're going to form DAOs. I'm a lot more skeptical on that. I think they're interesting and I think that they have great potential. But the idea of replacing companies, I mean, in many cases, certain organizations need to have hierarchies. There's a reason that there are people in certain positions of power with certain positions. You have a CEO, you have a CFO who handles the finances and the accounting. You have a COO, the operator. You have a board of directors with a company. And with a DAO, and this is a good segue to get into that acronym, what each letter stands for. The idea is that it's leaderless, that the decision-making is spread across the group equally. And that doesn't always work so well, right? So let's get into what DAO stands for. It's decentralized, autonomous, and it's an organization. And again, I really think that maybe eventually in time, we'll just call them internet organizations or internet groups. You could call them DAOs, digital organizations. But decentralized, well, they're not fully decentralized, at least at first. And, in the crypto context, what we usually mean when we say decentralized is there's no one in charge. There's no middleman. That's the whole point of crypto, right? The whole rallying cry of Bitcoin was that it's decentralized. There's no bank. It's outside of government control. It's peer-to-peer. But the problem with the DAO is someone has to create it, right? It doesn't just appear out of thin air. It has to have a creator or a founder. So what you often hear DAOs saying is they're going to progressively decentralize. So obviously, three people get together, they say, let's build a DAO for educating people in Germany about crypto. Cool. And they say, to join our education DAO, you have to buy a certain NFT. Fine. Obviously, at first, and for the first little while, those three people that founded it are running the DAO. They're in charge of it. So you couldn't really call it decentralized. So what DAOs say is we're going to progressively decentralize over time. And that means as we onboard more members and dish out more roles and responsibilities, there won't really be three people in charge. We won't have any more power than the rest of the members. That's fine, but it's going to take time. And then the A, autonomous. Autonomous means, as we know, it runs on its own, right? It's automatic. And that's how smart contracts in the crypto industry work. So Ethereum is a blockchain that exists for smart contracts. And those are contracts that you basically set it and forget it. The code enacts the contract. It's autonomous. DAOs aren't really autonomous. They don't run on their own. If they were truly autonomous, they would be running without humans involvement. The code would run it. So again, for now, I think DAO is kind of a misnomer, but it is what has caught on as the name of these things. And your question is the key one for the future of DAOs. How do you start it? How do you go from 0 to 1? How do you build the thing? And then how do you make sure that it keeps up and running and that the people involved who have a stake in it maintain it? And the best answer for now that DAOs have come up with is a token. There has to be tokenomics. There has to be an economy to the DAO, because otherwise, why are the members incentivized to give their work and their time to the DAO? There has to be a financial incentive. So the true DAOs have a token, and hypothetically, the token accrues value based on the work and the output of the DAO. And the reason that DAOs love Discord is because Discord makes it very easy to assign people specific roles. So you say to someone, you're in charge of the tokenomics. And you say to someone else, you're our head of content. You do all the announcements and the press releases. And you say to someone else, you're our community lead. So you're in charge of onboarding new members to the DAO. And every time they put in some work, they earn more tokens. It's basically the DAO economy. That for now is how they stay up and running, but it's very hard.
Yeah, then just in here, I have another question. So you mentioned that you assigned the role in Discord, but not in the DAO environment itself. What's the difference between that, or why we are not putting it transparently and visible to everyone in the DAO environment and make them vote on that? Instead, we use Discord and assign the roles to the people, or we find the willingness people and give the role to them.
Well, I should say that there are now already a whole suite of DAO tools. So it's not just Discord. You know, there's something called Coordinate, and that's where people try to figure out in a democratic way how to parcel out tokens to people based on how much work they've put in. So for example, and we can get into this, but Decrypt created a DAO. We have a media DAO, and it's not called the Decrypt DAO, which is confusing for a lot of people. It's called Pub DAO. That's the funny name we came up with. And it's no secret that Decrypt created it, because again, someone has to create a DAO. It doesn't just appear out of thin air, but you also want it to be decentralized. So although Decrypt, led the creation of it along with a few other key partners, now that it's been up and running for 3 months, we're in the process of trying to decentralize it. We're bringing on more members, and we're continually removing the amount of power that Decrypt has over the DAO. So someone in our DAO is in charge of figuring out and measuring how much work certain members have put in, certain officers of the DAO. And then they use this other platform, Coordinate, to parcel out tokens. Meanwhile, our token hasn't even launched yet, so that's a whole separate issue. But my point here is there are already multiple tools, and it can get very confusing. Discord is just the place where everyone gathers. So to answer your specific question, a lot of this stuff is recorded on chain. The true DAOs are measuring this stuff, and it's recorded in a permanent place on blockchain. But you got to have a place where everyone can chat freely and discuss and talk. And Discord has become that place. And that's where people kind of choose, the officer roles, the members. So for example, let's say that you had an interest in joining PubDAO, and it's open to anyone. Anyone can join. That doesn't mean anyone can publish stories and anyone can earn tokens, but anyone can join. I would send you the Discord invite link. And when you join and sign in, we see that you joined, but you're automatically assigned the lowest level. You're just a member. And then over time, you would say, well, I want to be a writer. I want to write content in this DAO. And we would sort of vet your work, or you would submit something. And eventually, if enough of the members say, Mehmet's writing is good, he's a good writer and he understands crypto, we would assign you a new role. There are tiers and levels. So we would make you a member of, say, the Writers Guild. Okay, now you get to see a certain chat room that you didn't get to see before because you're in the Writers Guild. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what I'm also understanding is that everyone is not equal in the DAO ecosystem. At least at the start, there are some levels, but you try to get rid of it. But you do it by inviting people to participate and create more. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's sort of like you get into it, you get out of it what you put into it. So, the thing is going to thrive and survive or die based on what people put in and participation. So we've seen many DAOs form quick, and then a month later they kind of collapse because the energy isn't there. I mean, it takes, continued participation. You need actively engaged people. And one reason that's hard is a lot of people who are, live and breathe crypto and they're full-time working on crypto things. They're out there saying, I now earn a living from all the DAOs I work in. That's great. But if they're in multiple DAOs, obviously there's no way they can be giving an equal amount of their time and participation and effort to all the DAOs they're in. So one challenge as a DAO evolves is identifying who are our core people who really are focused on this DAO.
Just in here, let me also encourage the audience to jump in whenever they like to the discussion. You can just ask a question, just stop me.
And by the way, as we wait for questions, it might be interesting for me to mention, there have been a couple recent examples where DAOs have sort of gone mainstream. They've suddenly got mainstream media attention that is outside just crypto. And the most recent example was Constitution DAO. So that was one of these DAOs that formed where the mission was, we're going to all put in money and we're going to buy a real life physical asset. And the asset was an actual copy of the US Constitution that was being auctioned by Sotheby's, or it might have been Christie's, one of the two big fancy auction houses. And that's so interesting because, say what you will about DAOs. And again, I think there are some real flaws with the structure, but this was a group of strangers who came together online and they raised $45 million in a matter of like 3 weeks. And I think that alone was quite an achievement. In the end, and some people think that, the reason they failed is they were too public about how much money they had. They failed. They lost the bidding process to a billionaire who knew exactly how much money the DAO had, and he outbid them. So they didn't get the Constitution. Fine. And in the end, they refunded the tokens to the people who invested. But still, I think what it demonstrated is just how quickly some of these DAOs raise money. And the second example is more recently, a DAO has formed with the goal of freeing Julian Assange, which, good luck with that. But that DAO has raised something like $70 million already. So they've eclipsed Constitution DAO. It's called Assange DAO. So a lot of these DAOs, they have a big, high, ambitious goal that they may not attain, but it does show that these people in crypto who believe in DAOs, they are true believers. And even the fact that they're willing to invest their money with a group of people they don't know and have never met, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Since we're talking about examples, also what I wonder about, I know there are many social kind of DAOs around, and also there are many DAOs which are popular about getting funds and creating an investment together. But other than that, since we are talking about governance, what about some implications of that in some city governance examples, for example? Are there any cities already started to be governed like that, or are we started already to see some examples outside the business area, actually?
Yeah, so there's a really interesting recent example. These are DAOs where they're sort of working as they should, but controversies result, right? So I'll give you two examples. Probably the most, I don't know about popular or successful, but one of the best known already DAOs is FWB, and it stands for Friends with Benefits. Yeah. It's basically a crypto social club. It's kind of like a cool kids club. And when it launched, you had to buy the FWB token to get membership in the DAO. And of course, as the DAO has risen in, stature, the token has risen in value, and it's now pretty expensive to buy in. And there are people who look at that and they say, it's all stupid. It's just kind of, a scheme to make the token rise. But FWB has already done a number of interesting things. They've used some of their treasury. We talk about a DAO's treasury, the amount of crypto that the members have pooled together. They've done things with their treasury like fund projects, buy certain NFTs, give money to charity or invest in startups. And if they're smart, these bets pay off and the members of the DAO get return on their investment. So FWB has been a popular one. But another one recently, and I'm trying to find our own story on it. I don't remember if it was Rarible, but a DAO in an example of, here it is, Maker DAO. Someone submitted a proposal to the DAO. And again, this is an example of when the decentralized autonomous organization is actually functioning as it's supposed to. Someone submits a proposal and the DAO members vote. And if the vote passes, that thing happens. And there's no CEO who can veto it and say, no, 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 you could vote out the person who's in power. So MakerDAO, someone proposed that the content team, so the group of people who were tasked with promoting the DAO, publishing content, doing blog posts, someone said the content team wasn't doing a good job and proposed to kick them all out. And the proposal passed by a slim margin and they said goodbye. And the whole content team, I mean, these are like 5 or 6 human beings, were booted from the DAO. And that's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, in some ways it seems kind of mean and hostile, but that's the DAO functioning as it should. That's DAO governance.
I just realized that in the chat, some questions started already to came. There's a question from Brock. Brock, would you like to jump in to talk about it, or would you like me to read the question to them?
Both is fine. Perhaps I can say.
Yeah.
Daniel, you mentioned about people getting involved in DAOs because of the benefits that DAOs can provide them, like tokens and tokenomics, etc. But in some even rare cases like open source development world, I think it's not a must to have some financial benefits, to give some financial benefits to do something that makes you feel you are realizing yourself. So what do you think about it? So, in some way, some DAOs can live without tokenomics and financial benefits?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. It's a good question. And I'll give you 2 examples. I think to some extent that's true. You're right that maybe you don't have to have a financial incentive, but I think for a lot of people, it's becoming naive to think that people will contribute their time out of the good of their heart, right? You have to be giving them something. Now, it might not be financial incentive. Maybe it's clout. Maybe it's, helping their personal brand. So a good reference here, and this predates crypto, is GitHub. GitHub is an open source website where you, a coder, and I don't know how to code, but increasingly a lot of people know how to code, and it's a wonderful skill to have. You can contribute to a project's open source code. And in fact, Bitcoin is open source. Now that doesn't mean that that enough of the people will approve of the code, but people all the time can suggest a tweak to an open source project. And in the past, you wouldn't be doing that other than your own clout of, I'm a coder and look at me, I'm now a contributor to this big project that everyone knows. Some people would say on Twitter, I contributed to this project source code. You say, oh, wow. And it results in, probably you become more of a renowned expert. You might get interview requests. You might get more Twitter followers. But then something came along called Gitcoin. And Gitcoin is exactly what it sounds like. It's a crypto project that rewards coders in coins. They created a token. So basically it took the GitHub concept and it says, rather than just doing it to be a good, nice coder who helps improve a project, now you have even more incentive because you'll earn coins. So that's the first example. I think it's pretty smart. The second to your question is, I mentioned the media DAO that we started at Decrypt. It's called PubDAO. Eventually there will be a token, but there isn't one yet. Crypto purists would look at that and say, well, it's not a true DAO. It's not a real DAO until there's a token. I'm kind of with you. I think, well, it's a media DAO and its mission is to publish smart content. So I think and hope that there would be a lot of people who would want to contribute to our DAO to get their work published. Isn't that a pretty good incentive? Or to help suggest stories. Or RestartLab could join our DAO and say, we think someone should write a story on the interesting things we're doing at RestartLab. That's a pretty good incentive. So you're right. I think there are people who wouldn't need financial incentive to participate. But on the other hand, a lot of people say, it's not really a real DAO until there's a DAO economy, a token.
Thank you.
There's another question coming from Betula. Actually, I was also thinking about the same thing, about decision-making process. So Betül, would you like to speak out of yourself, or I can with your question? So Betül is actually asking about decision making driven by consensus can also cause some problems. So does majority voting also lead to mediocre outcomes? Or what kind of decision processes actually in DAOs we can use?
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned that example of MakerDAO firing the content team, right? I think that considering that proposal only passed by a slim margin, a lot of people would say that was a mediocre outcome. And so, as I was saying before, I think that there are flaws to this system. And I'll give you another reason I think there are flaws. Maybe I'm biased because in my past life, I covered big publicly traded companies. I was at Yahoo Finance and we would cover stocks. I tend to think that there's a reason the traditional business structure has worked for many, many, many decades. There's a board of directors. They are people who've been elected to the board because they have a certain level of years of experience and they know the business. And when there's a big decision to be made, the board of directors vote. And, if we applied the DAO concept to big companies, it would be like Tesla saying, we're going to let all of the employees in the factory who work on our car parts vote on who our next CEO is. That's probably not a great idea. You're probably the people working in the factory shouldn't really be the ones deciding who should be the next executive to lead the company, right? So I think there are some cases where, DAO governance by consensus makes sense, and some cases where it doesn't. And I'll give you another little example that's happening that's really interesting. We've written a couple stories about this, but recently the crypto community has been grappling with when they discover the personal views of prominent people in crypto. And crypto is not the only industry dealing with this. All industries are dealing with this. But, I'm talking about the Me Too era and people getting so-called canceled for their political views. But it's especially interesting that it's happening in crypto because crypto has always had this kind of libertarian ethos of open, everybody in, apolitical, forget government control. We govern ourselves. And, we're the rebels and we're in it together. And so now it's kind of getting awkward when certain influential people in crypto, who in many cases, other crypto people only know because of their Twitter avatar. They know that this person is Squiggly and they call him Squiggly and they don't know who Squiggly's real name is. And that's okay because it's all about anonymity and decentralization and Web3. And then it turns out that Squiggly is racist. It's just an example. But people go, oh, God. And so now it becomes, well, should we kick Squiggly out of our DAO? But a lot of people in the DAO would say, well, Squiggly's a great coder and Squiggly's contributed great things to the DAO. So Squiggly's personal views shouldn't come into one who has racist views to be a member of our DAO. So that's all becoming really interesting. And it's raising certain questions about consensus, decentralization. And I brought that up because, to answer your question, there are sometimes recently where DAOs have voted someone out because of something offensive they tweeted. So they're grappling with those questions right now.
It also made me wonder about the result of Tesla people voting about their executives. I wonder whether they will choose to continue with Elon Musk or not. It's a big question.
Right. I mean, he's been very good for shareholder value, but he also has repeatedly tweeted kinds of reckless stuff. So it kind of depends where you fall, right? Do you worship at the cult of Musk or do you think he's a liability?
Exactly. So we have another question from Biltor. Biltor, would you like to jump in?
Sure. So my question is for DAO ideas from outside US. Okay. So then what do you see? Building awareness, reaching meaningful amount of memberships, keeping the pace with their peers in US. How such DAOs, become attractive for interested people and communities. And what do you think about Decrypt's view and support over non-US initiatives? How can they be in your radar? So that's a couple of questions. One, opening the other one, but
Sure. So I have seen some really in China, just to give you one example. I mean, they're happening all over the world. And I think a big appeal of them is that they're global. I mean, as long as you can access now. And the reason China is interesting, specifically, an interesting testing ground for DAOs, is because the country has really cracked down on crypto. I mean, I'm sure you guys have read about that in passing, but China, as recently as like 4 years ago, was the biggest, market for crypto mining in the world. And then China said, we want all the miners out, and they cracked down. And so mining, the concentration of where mining was happening really migrated out of China quickly. But the crypto industry there is not dead. It kind of just went underground. And in fact, we published a great column about this over the weekend. So I can link you guys to that after the tutorial. But people in China are forming DAOs because for the exact purpose of DAOs, like it works for them. They can do it. They can chat. They can exist without an arbiter or government control stepping in. And, if a DAO got really big and had, 20,000 members in China, and it was buying up NFTs, and it suddenly had a huge treasury, there's nothing that the Chinese government could really do to stop it. Now, maybe they could block Discord, and they have walled off many apps, but people use, what's the term I'm looking for, where you use something to get into a firewalled app? VPN. They VPN in.
Yeah.
So that's all that could really be done. There's nothing that a government party could do to like shut down a DAO. And that's the whole idealism here, right? Is that no one can stop us. There's a little bit of a spirit of rebellion. And some DAOs in China have become very prominent because they've bought up high value NFT artworks, and then they've flipped them. So they're making money. So I think that's an area where it's really cool. Shorter answer to your question is that they're definitely cropping up all over the world. It's not just in the US. And in fact, keep in mind, Ethereum, which is the blockchain, the network that most DAOs are building off of, was created by a Russian, Vitalik Buterin, along with a bunch of other co-founders. But he's really the founder. And I think he was like 17 or 18. He's like, crazy whiz kid. But crypto is by no means a US only thing.
Thanks.
I see Mehmet Parlak is raising his hand. Please go ahead. We cannot hear you.
Other questions?
Okay, maybe it was a mistake. Yeah, perfect. So maybe I can add one question in here. What about the main challenges in setting up a DAO? What are some major blockers? And if you also can share about some tips about handling them, it will be wonderful to hear from your side.
Can you, sorry, I was answering, this is sort of the life of a crypto news site editor, is I'm constantly being slapped by.
Multitasking, right, yeah.
But go ahead.
So, yeah, I was trying to ask about the main challenges or major blockers in a DAO setup. What kind of challenges do you see, and how to get rid of them?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think some challenges are keeping people engaged, which is hard. I mean, if it's a company, again, people keep comparing them to companies, and I don't know if that's the best comparison. If we are using the company analogy, in a company, everyone continues to work because it's their job. They're paid a salary. It's their career, right? Their full-time job is to work for that company. In DAOs, almost no one is working full-time for the DAO. They're working for multiple DAOs. So there is a risk of getting fly-by-night people who just jump into the DAO, they want to earn the tokens, and then they're silent. And even me, I mean, I find Discord, the chat app, to be very noisy. I'm constantly getting ping, 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 ping. So I'm in a couple Discord servers, and sometimes I'll go like 3 weeks without even checking it for new messages because there's just too many things to check. I mean, there's Telegram, there's Signal, there's Twitter DM, there's email, there's Instagram DM, there's Slack, which is what we use internally at Decrypt. So if you really want people to continue engaging, this goes back to Burak's question. You need to incentivize them to keep going. And I think sometimes DAOs have a risk of growing stale and kind of dying. So that's a big hurdle there. Another hurdle with the economics is, let's look at Constitution DAO. They raised a bunch of money, wanted to buy an asset, and then they failed to buy that asset. That was a watershed moment where, well, what do we now do with the money? And at first, Constitution DAO put out some proposals like, well, let's take the money and put it towards something else. Let's buy this other thing instead. But many of the people who gave their money the first time around didn't want to buy this other thing. So you better refund them their tokens. And in the end, they couldn't come to consensus about a new object to try to buy. So they refunded everyone their tokens. And the other problem there was you didn't get all your money back because there are gas fees to mint the token. So you lose the gas fees. So those are some issues, is like, when you have a goal, fixing people, making them whole, making their investment whole after you fail to get the goal.
Another one that I can add on top of that. So where to start? What will be your guidance or advice on that? So because in order to start, for example, there's one question that I'm hearing lots of the time. What level of technical knowledge do you need in order to start to be part of a DAO, not to establish a one, actually? Because, the blockchain, cryptocurrency market sometimes make people a bit afraid of, so and stop people being part of this movement. So what's your advice on that?
100%. It can be very intimidating. That's kind of what we seek to do at Decrypt, is help people, ease them into the space, explain these technical concepts. And so a two-part question there. First, we talked about starting a DAO, right? How do you go from 0 to 1? How do you just start one? Yeah. Most of them create a Discord server. And again, it doesn't have to be Discord, but that seems to be for now what everyone's using. And step one is you create the Discord server. And again, you've got to have kind of a few people who are the members right at the beginning. So let's say RestartLab created a Restart DAO. Let's say you have a mailing list of 35 members. Right away at the onset, you would invite all 35 people to the Discord server. Then as you start to promote the DAO, you would invite people who aren't already in your community, who aren't already members of RestartLab. You would also, at some point, the earlier the better, DAOs publicly post their mission statement. And they call it, let's see, mirror these. And it's funny, you asked about the different tools, right? I mean, there are so many different platforms where DAOs operate. So one is Mirror, which is a decentralized blogging platform that DAOs have flocked to. It's mirror.xyz. And so many DAOs use their Mirror page as their answer for all their public statements. That's the home of all of their press releases and their announcements. And they use the Mirror page here. I'm going to put PubDAOs in the chat. There we go. So they post each DAO announcement to the Mirror page for transparency. And again, that's because the whole point here when it comes to crypto is public, decentralized. It's not walled off. Every move you make is publicly shared. There's no secrets. Now, of course, messages sent in the Discord are only visible to members of the Discord. But early on, DAOs kind of post like, here's what we aim to do. Here's how we're going to build. And then you might create some guilds, which are basically sub channels, So who's going to be in charge of onboarding new members? That's our membership guild. Who's going to be in charge of, choosing what topics we'll educate people on? What should our next 5 webinars be about? That's our education guild. And as long as you're public and transparent about what you're doing, that's kind of how you grow. And you set up a Twitter account and you share updates and you invite people to the Discord and you assign people different roles in the Discord. That's how you start. And to touch back just briefly on the second part of it, the hurdles, like keeping it going and also making good decisions. I mean, it's hard because DAOs are growing so quickly. There's a real startup ethos of move fast and break things, right? Everyone in tech loves to move fast and break things, but you also don't want to move so fast, especially because you're holding people's money. People's crypto is in a shared treasury. So you don't want to be reckless and lose everyone's money. So I tend to think that some DAOs could stand to move a little less fast. We recently wrote about a DAO that bought the Dune Bible. And it's a copy of a screenplay for a Dune movie that never got made, but it's sort of a cult classic among fans of Dune. And I love Dune, the books. And the DAO succeeded. They bought the Dune Bible. But then they started to publicly say, here's what we're going to do with the Dune Bible. We're going to make a movie. We're going to make a comic book. It's like, wait a minute, guys, you don't have the legal rights to do that. I mean, they needed to do a little more homework first. You know, you bought the screenplay, fine, but you don't have the rights to it, the legal copyright. And they sort of looked like, oh, yeah, I guess they kind of looked silly, you know, because they were trying to move so fast and they were so excited. And it was like, wait a minute, you don't own the copyright to the contents of the document. You basically just bought a souvenir.
It's like don't drink and DAO.
Right. I like that. Yeah.
One thing you mentioned that you don't need to, in the early stages of an establishment of a DAO, you don't need to have a treasury, you don't need to mint some tokens. But what's the correct timing for starting the token economics?
Yeah, I think that's a key question that people are trying to answer. FWB launched with a token right away. And it was like, you can't get in unless you buy the token. That worked for them because the people behind it were prominent crypto people who already were well known. They had big followings. They're big crypto personalities. You know, it's like, I'm the editor of a well-known crypto site, but even I don't have that many Twitter followers. You know, I have like 20,000 something. Maybe if I had 300,000, I could start a Dan DAO right away. But you're asking people to buy a token, you better have some kind of appeal to them. So FWB had that instant appeal. People knew this would be something. You know, for something else where you're starting from scratch, you should probably give it some time. Get the members first. I like to say, you know, the movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. With DAOs, they kind of need to come first. And then you build it. You build it once you have members. It's hard to build it when you don't have anyone in it yet. So it's about that timing and balancing what to do and when.
Can I have some quick question
Sure,
about
please.
this? Dan, you know, about PubDAO membership. I've tried to become a member because I've seen that you had some trial, but you closed it. So when should we expect to become a PubDAO member?
You might have clicked, there might have been a wrong link circulating because anyone can join the Discord channel. Then once you join, someone has to assign you different roles. So there are certain channels that not all members get to see. You know, there's the Writers Guild. There's what's it called? Like Development Guild, I think Development. And that's kind of the hardcore techie people who are coders who are helping us suggest things to do with the actual structure. Then there's like the Tokenomics Guild. There's 3 people who are in charge of, you know, figuring out when we should launch a token, how many the supply should be, and who should get the token. But anyone can join that base level. So I'll just send you guys a link. Everyone is welcome. We have a channel that I check every few days where members suggest stories. In some cases, it's people who are suggesting to PubDAO stories about other DAOs. And that's cool. You know, that's basically, hey, I'm in a cool DAO. You should do news coverage of our DAO. Then there are writers who pitch a story that they want to write. And we've already had a number of stories get published. Some of them have been published on multiple websites at once, which I think is great. I think that proves that it's a decentralized project. It's not just one person in charge. Because if it were just Decrypt, well, then there's no difference from basically Decrypt freelancers writing stories for Decrypt. So I think something like 8 or 9 stories have been published via PubDAO in the 3 or 4 months since we launched. But it's very early stages. It's very protean for now. I'm going to send Biltor and Maymat, you guys, an email with a goodie bag with some links for you guys, you know, follow-up reading and links to cool things.
That will be great. So then what's the future of decentralization? Where do you see the future of DAO? What is next for the DAO?
Well, it's quite a question, right? I mean, if only I could look into my crystal ball.
Yeah.
Actually, Daniel, I asked that in the chat. Let me extend it a little bit more. My mic had a problem. So Bitcoin is cool because it's fully decentralized, right? It's a proof
Yes, it
of
is.
work, but it's super bad for the climate. We agree on that. So Ethereum went to proof of stake, but now there are whales, like rich became richer. So
Yeah.
DAO has a concern on that, right? Elon Musk, we want to take it off, like out of the game. Hey, Elon, go away. But he's super rich, so he can go jump to the DAO and get 51% of the DAO tokens. So how will really that work, right? Corruption is still there. Like
Yep.
the rich will get a vote.
I understand. That is a real concern with some projects. And you're right. I mean, Bitcoin maximalists, which are, you know, people who basically think there is only one crypto god and that god is Bitcoin, and they're not interested in anything else. No Ethereum, no shitcoins, no altcoins. They just like Bitcoin. Those people say that's because Bitcoin is the only one that's truly decentralized. And it is fully decentralized. Now, most people think Ethereum is too, but if you were to collect the 6 or 7 co-founders, they have a large percentage of the ETH, but not a majority percentage. So one way DAOs try to prevent that is it's built into the DAO governance that no one person can hold more than 50% of the tokens. Because you're right, then you would have full voting power. But it is a concern, it is a problem. And I think one thing that's emerging more and more is rich VCs, venture capitalists, who are buying a huge amount of tokens in a new project, or they're investing in a hot crypto startup. And in return for their investment, they're getting tokens. And then suddenly they're the ones who stand to make a big windfall when the token goes up. And then they dump the token and cash out. And it screws the other people because the price of the token plummets. So I don't have the answer. I mean, I think it's a real concern. And that's why a big question, controversy that a lot of new projects have to answer for is people say, well, you're not really decentralized. It's not decentralized. And so what a lot of newer token projects say is we're progressively decentralizing. We're getting there. For example, Stacks was a crypto project that is a layer built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain that launched its token 4 years ago, STX. And of course, at the beginning, when they launched the token, it wasn't decentralized. The 4 founders owned more than 50% of the tokens. But then as more people bought into the project and the founders progressively sold off their tokens, they finally, about 6 months ago, announced officially, we are fully decentralized. And that's a big moment, a big achievement for these projects is when they can say, we are now decentralized. No one, you know, firm or group or company or person has a majority of the tokens. But a lot of projects when they first start are not there.
But like super, like I agree with all your comments and they are so wise. But it still eventually comes to the consensus mechanism, right? The proof of stake. So I think the entire proof of stake is corrupt because if you are a validator, you have a, you know, like a bigger vote. Like this is like Rich has a bigger vote. So like for instance, the DAO says, hey, nobody can have 50%. But if you are 50 friends having 1%, then you are 50% of the votes, right? Elon Musk can hire 50 people and hey, here's the money and go get my votes. So again, DAO is amazing, but I don't see Google becoming a DAO.
No.
But right?
No.
So,
but
no, but they won't let it happen. But
right.
It should, because there are so many amazing scientists who are earning over thousands of executive there, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, 2 quick things there. I mean, one is it's interesting what you say about proof of stake. And just so everyone understands, the way proof of stake works is you would mine a token by proving that you already own a certain amount of tokens. So it's supposed to reward the people who have skin in the game, who have a stake. So you're staking some amount of your tokens in order to get and create more. And, you know, that has some problems with it. You're right. But what people say on the other hand is it's better than proof of work, because proof of work, which is what Bitcoin still uses, the Bitcoin blockchain uses, has very high energy use. It uses a lot of electricity. And so a lot of the people out there who hate Bitcoin, they use its energy use as their reason for hating Bitcoin. And so what people say in return is, well, you know, Ethereum is moving from proof of work to proof of stake. So there are trade-offs with both mechanisms. As for companies becoming DAOs, you're right, Google's never going to do it. But I should certainly mention a specific example. Shapeshift, was one of the earliest companies in crypto. It's been around since like 2012 or 2013. And it's a crypto exchange, that recently fully decentralized. And the founder and CEO, Eric Voorhees, basically fired himself as CEO because the whole company became a DAO. They're literally, they no longer have any employees. They just have a DAO and DAO members. And certain people put in more work and they earn more tokens. They created a token, the Fox token. But that is truly the best example right now. That was a company that had VC investors. It was a startup and it had a headquarters and offices. And now it just exists on the internet. It's a DAO. So that's really interesting to keep tabs on.
So the real innovation will be maybe on the consensus of the DAO, right? Maybe new models of new, consensus of a DAO might show up.
Maybe.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
I think what I'm seeing is that in the upcoming years, the experiments around DAOs will continue. So maybe a consensus, we still have some time. So thanks. Unfortunately, we are running out of our time, but maybe we can have a few more questions if we still have. Anybody who would like to jump in?
So I may jump in if it's okay.
This is probably the last one for me.
Okay.
Okay, then. So don't misunderstand me. I'm not an anti-digital guy, but I think there are always some problems about digitalization because we saw it in emails, we saw it in chat groups that we lose somehow empathy in digital world. So when a company goes in DAO way, what do you think about the risk of losing empathy and human side in conversations and also the how can I say in the decisions of the groups? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. I mean, there's some great things about the internet and about talking to people online, but you do, I think, lose a certain aspect of connection, right? And sure. A little bit, it's like what I got at earlier about people discovering the personal views behind people's online identities. And, in our new remote work revolution, which was happening long before the pandemic, but the pandemic really accelerated it. I do think that we lose something. I mean, I think there are great things about an office where you go in and you see people in person and you interact face to face. I'm not a believer in the office is dead and everything should just be remote work. But I think probably for now, when it comes to crypto, when it comes to DAO working groups, the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. The ability for people in all different time zones all around the world to message with each other instantly, I think that's really amazing. Like I wake up, I'm on East Coast time in Connecticut. I wake up and I check a certain Discord group and tons of the people who are 6 hours ahead of me or people in Asia have sent all these messages overnight. So it allows a group of people in different time zones to jump in and kind of put in some work whenever they're available to. So I think that's great, but you're right that it certainly has drawbacks. And I also think, as someone alluded to earlier, not everyone is so tech savvy, so in some ways this whole crypto revolution cuts out people who, let's not take for granted. There are people who you say, well, just go to Discord or download Discord or just go, they go, they barely understand how to open up their web browser. They've only just had a smartphone a few years. Not everyone understands this stuff. And so I do think the UX, the user experience, needs to get much better.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. It was a great discussion for this session. Really, I enjoyed it a lot personally. I hope you did too. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Dan, for joining us
guys.
tonight.
Thanks, guys. Good luck, and read all of our news at Decrypt. Hope you will.
Yeah, thank you. And looking forward for your email, and we will be sharing it with the community in here in Turkey. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And please keep following us. Soon we will announce our upcoming events. So see you soon. Thank you.